Hey guys, it's Robert back from East Coast Sawing Design. Today is part 2 of the new shop build, and I'm laying out the beam support today. So as you can see behind me, the beams are some logs I milled up into forks into 2 flat edges. So they're all about 4 inches thick. The second one in is actually just a bit thicker. And the reason I do that is you get the equivalent of a 4x6 without taking 4 square edges off, because it's beam supports. They're on the ground. They're not going to worry about anything. And the reason I'm doing long beams crosswise, because typically when you build sheds that are longer than they are wide, your beams run the length. My shop, the floor is going to be made into multiple pieces, because I'm using an existing floor I had already built for another project that never panned out. And it's only 7 feet wide, and my final shop's going to be 10 feet wide. So by having the beams run crosswise, they'll support that center seam of 7 foot seam, and then the last 3 feet to make 10 feet of width. So I'm not going to do a whole ton of talking in this video. I'm just going to shim up the supports. I don't know, you can see I got a bunch of 1x material up the other end, as well as a couple shims, some tapered shim stock. And first thing I got to do is line up the beam with the mark I want it at, because it's going to be 0, 4 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 14 feet, and beam at 18 feet from backwards into the front. So I've got to mark all my center lines. I don't know if you can see in the video, there's some black ticks on the shop, the shed, and the shop. And those are just the approximate position of where I want all my beams at. The reason there's 2 beams in the center at 2 feet is I want a little extra support there for the floor, as my table saw is going in dead center of the shop. And that would be the 2 beams in the center of the shop. Plus it worked out a little better for numbers. So I'll move you guys in a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing as I work, and enjoy the video. Alright guys, so I got the beam laid out. So first thing I'm going to do is take my transit tape. And the reason I use my transit measuring tape is there's a ring on the end of it, just so that it makes it a little bit easier for me to hook it onto a nail. And it gives me my rough center line. So I got a nail set on the very end of my beam, and that'll be the end of the building. So I want this beam at 4 foot on center. So roughly where the center line of this beam is, I want it at 4 feet. So measure it out. So we're about 2 inches off where I want it, which would be fine. Alright, so that one's on. That's at 2 foot center. Let me just real quick put the other side on 4 foot center. Alright, so it's on 4 foot center. So now what I want to do is take my level and check my front to back on this beam, on this side. And then if I need to shim it up, I will. And then I'll check my front to back on the other side, and then the beam itself should be level because the first one was leveled yesterday. All right, so we got to come up about a bit more than an inch. So I can use the, so we're a bit more than an inch on ground depth. So I can use two thicker shims and some shim stock. So just give me a second here, guys. All right, so these are about 7/8 thick, and that got us to not quite there yet. So I'll use one of my tapered shims. So these were actually an experiment in making shingles. So they're tapered, so I can just set them in with a hammer and just tap them in to get my depth. Again, these beams don't have to be kind of dead nuts accurate where you want them. The building's going to shift and settle and do all kinds of wonky things over its life. All right, so now we're dead level from front to back. So, because these beams are 4 inches thick, I'm not worried about sag so much. So I'm going to check the front to back level. So it appears we're a bit high on the far side, so I won't need to shim that out. What I got to do is dig it out. So I'll turn the camera and I'll show you the process for that. So I'm going to dig this one out. You kind of see the way the ground is shaped that it's sitting on a bit of a moss pile. So what I got is a chunk cut off one of the beams. So I'll be able to lift this up, support it, and then I'll be able to dig out. It's only going to drop maybe ½ an inch. And if it gets a little too low, I can shim it up after the fact. This is just a really old framing hammer I got. It was gifted to me. Can't really beat something like a framing hammer for digging out small amounts of dirt. Alright, so we're pretty much spot on where I want to be. Maybe a hair. under, but check the lengthwise. Okay, so our lengthwise says we gotta, our depthwise says we gotta go up way, but shouldn't. So what's our long length say? Our long length says we're at level. Do I got a hump in this beam? Alright, our beam's now level. Didn't take much. Sometimes you end up digging out more dirt than you need. So now I'm gonna do the rest of them. I'm gonna move you guys back out to the far side. Because I don't need you in here with me for the rest of it. So as you can see, guys, not that difficult to align my beams. The whole thing's going to settle really rapidly once it's built, so I'm not too concerned about it. Hopefully it'll just go straight down. So I got 2 more beams left to install. My one at 14 feet from the end and my one at 18 feet from the end. As you probably notice, there's quite a bit of gap in the center of a lot of these, so I will come back and put some additional support and use the shims to get that nice and tight. So that's the end of part 3. Part 4 will be bringing in will be when I bring in the new floor, and that'll be exciting. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down, tell me why. Consider subscribing. I really appreciate it if you do. Thanks, guys.